Welcome back to Wow Drama Stories, where you get all the drama from a safe distance. Timestamps are in the description box. Story number 1. Opie writes, Background. My grandma, Mom's mom, was diagnosed with very late-stage advanced lung cancer that had metastasized to 90% of her body. By the time the diagnosis was given, there was not much time left at all. This was obviously a very sad time for everyone, along with the devastation of knowing we were going to lose a beloved family member soon. We were also very worried about funeral costs. My grandma was very poor and had no life insurance. My mother's whole side of the family is also very financially underprivileged, struggling with addiction and barely making ends meet. In short, no one had any idea how to pay for a funeral. My cousin called one of grandmother's old boyfriends up, let's call him Bill, a man that loved her very deeply, but my grandma never returned his romantic affections. Bill stayed a close family friend for many years, always loving my grandma, but he eventually moved away and we all fell out of touch for over a decade. When told about my grandma's cancer and prognosis and financial situation of the family, Bill, who was very well off, he offered to pay on his own volition 100% of all funeral costs. Cousin says it was his idea from the start, not hers, but I can't corroborate that. Either way, he offered, and I thought it was very kind and generous of him. The day my grandmother actually passed away, my mother was absolutely furious to find out Bill was paying the funeral. She believed it was highly unethical in her eyes to, quote, manipulate a lonely old man into paying for something that wasn't his burden to bear, unquote. So my mother called Bill up and told him not to pay our family a cent because he didn't owe us or my grandma anything. To the rest of us, it wasn't manipulation, but a generous and charitable offer made by someone who cared about my grandmother very much and wanted to help. When I found out what happened, I called my mother and yelled quite a bit. I was very angry at her, saying that Bill offered to pay out of kindness and love for Grandma, and it was wrong to refuse his gift, especially since we were now suddenly back to square one with figuring out how to pay for the funeral last minute. My mom stood by her actions and said that she didn't know how we were going to pay for the funeral, but that it was wrong to accept Bill's money, whether he offered it on his own volition or not. I called her actions, quote, straight up evil, unquote, and hung up the phone. After enough flack from the family, my mother ended up putting all the funeral costs on her credit card and going into a lot of debt to smooth it all over. Looking back, I do feel bad that the first conversation I had with her on the day she lost her mother was full of anger, and I have apologized to her since about not being comforting in the immediate wake of her mother's death. But she wants me to tell her she was, quote, right, unquote, to do what she did. I can't bring myself to tell her she was in the right, and I still feel like what she did was ultimately wrong. Edit. Additional info for common questions. 1. The person who called him was my cousin, not me, since that seems to be confusing for some. I was not involved, but thought that his offer and kindness were very generous and agreed with accepting his offer. 2. The call's purpose was to inform him of my grandmother's passing, not to ask for money. 3. After catching up with the updates of the family and my cousin confiding truthfully that we were worried about how to pay for a funeral, he then offered on his own to pay for it. 4. He has all of his mental faculties intact, does not have dementia or Alzheimer's or any other condition that would impact his ability to make a sound decision. It was a genuine gift he wanted to give. He has no wife or children. So he thought the money would do some good for a woman he cared about. 5. I'd like to repeat that yes, I did apologize to my mother for not being more calm/comforting that day. She lost her mother, but I also lost my grandma, so I was also devastated and emotional, and just in the state of, quote, now my grandma won't get a funeral because of my mother's refusal to accept charity, unquote. So, am I the a-hole? Should I tell my mom she was right? OP, sorry for your loss, and certainly that would be very stressful, having your grandma sick and at the same time having to worry about funeral expenses. Of course, that makes a stressful situation even more stressful, and I do believe this is something a lot of people struggle with. You don't say what the funeral cost was. I'm kind of curious how much it was. Was it something simple, a straight cremation, or was it something more lavish that you were going for? I have no idea. However, let's not kid ourselves. All of you you wanted Bill to agree to this. And he kindly did, and you keep talking about how much he cared about your grandmother. I don't doubt that, but you also said that your grandmother never returned his feelings. And yet, yeah, he was going to pay for the funeral. I do think it's a bit too much. And the fact that he doesn't have a wife and children, it doesn't make it okay. And you don't actually say that Bill is wealthy. It just sounds like he's comfortable. And, well, you said your family is quite underprivileged financially. When people don't do well financially, they tend to look at people that are okay financially as having a lot of money. You know, when somebody is getting on in years, they really need their money, especially someone like Bill. You said no children. There's nobody that's going to care for him. He's going to have to pay for somebody to help him one day. So that's why I don't feel right about this at all, amongst other reasons. But okay, let's see what other people have to say. Someone comments, so you are okay preying on an elderly man's loneliness as long as it saves you $1 or $2. Interesting. Your mother's biggest problem isn't her credit card bill. To this, OP replies, I think that's a little harsh, honestly. Is everyone that accepts charity when they need it, quote, preying on people, unquote? He was in a position to help and decided to offer a generous and loving solution. He is capable of making his own decisions. And someone else comments, you are the a-hole. So you're telling me your cousin called up this wealthy gentleman and told him about your dying grandmother and her poor financial situation and had no intention of seeing if he'd offer to pay. Your mom did the morally right thing. To this, OP replies, she definitely may have called him with that ultimate intention, true. I honestly don't know. Regardless, he is of sound mind and capable of his own decisions. So if he genuinely wanted to help us out of charity, I don't see the moral issue in accepting his offer. If he had dementia or was blackmailed or something, then I'd get it. But he was just trying to be kind. Let's get 2 more comments and then we can move on to story number 2. Someone says, you are the a-hole. Wow! Your mother was right. You all were being greedy. I can't imagine the stress you all put on that woman in her time of need. Then to go on and say she had to go into debt to smooth it over. Your mother may have forgiven you, but this will forever be linked to her mother's death. Her daughter calling her evil because she dared to not take advantage of someone's kindness. I'm disgusted. Let's get a final comment. You are the a-hole. Your mom did the right thing, which I'm sure wasn't easy. It doesn't seem to be any skin off your nose, since she assumed the debt herself. Even if you don't agree, I think it's better not to judge people on what they do when they're mourning, unless it's really self-destructive. I feel like you want to die on this hill, and it makes no sense to me. Let's move on to story number 2. OP writes, so I'm 53 female, husband 52 male. I've never been thin, but not heavy either. As I get older, I've developed a little stomach pouch. I eat clean and work out, but it stays. My husband likes to make fun of me. He'll grab my stomach and say, getting fat. He calls me hefty. When I eat, he'll say, do you need that? I'm struggling with getting older and the body changes. He even pokes fun at me in public. He'll randomly say to a stranger, quote, my wife's getting fat, unquote. Last night I had enough. I asked him to stop and he kept going, saying Fatty Mac fat. I'm 5'3" and 137 pounds. So not thin, but not overweight either. I finally snapped and got up and stormed out. I went to my son, he's 31. I was terribly upset and talked to my son about it. My husband called and said I was overreacting and being vain. He said I was being an a-hole for involving my son and I need to come home and apologize. I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole or not. No, Opie, I do not think you are the a-hole. And Fatty Mac fat? Really? An adult, a 53, 52-year-old man said that? Some thoughts that popped into my head as I was reading this is 1, you're not fat. 2, weight gain around the stomach and you're 53, that's menopausal. That happens and that's why you're struggling to get rid of it. 3, what does your husband even look like? I'm guessing a few extra pounds around the stomach as well. Perhaps a receding hairline or maybe even bald. You know, the normal signs of aging, in other words. But really at the root of this, it's a lot of disrespect. Your husband doesn't respect you. He doesn't respect the boundaries that you've drawn when you said you don't like it. And apart from that, when a woman packs up her things and leaves the home, a place that usually a woman puts a lot of effort into, if she leaves that home, it means she no longer feels safe there. So, Opie, not the a-hole. Your husband, on the other hand, is a big one. So let's get some comments. Someone comments, not the a-hole. Your husband is purposefully trying to annoy, if not humiliate you. Has he kept himself in tip-top shape all these years? Opie replies, that's the weird part. He has a big belly, and I always tell him I love him just how he is. He thinks it's funny to joke about mine. He knows it upsets me, but he tells me I need thicker skin. I was bullied terribly as a child, which I think still affects my self-esteem. Thank you for the kind words. Someone else writes, 5'3" and 137 pounds. You are not even remotely fat. I'm 5'2" and weigh about 170. My husband tells me every single day how beautiful I am. You deserve that too. Men who joke about their wives' weight piss me off. And saying you're fat to a total stranger? If you want to get rid of some dead weight, you could always dump him. Someone else comments, not the a-hole, but your husband surely is. He has proven to be disrespectful of you, and he doesn't care making fun of you in front of others. He isn't accepting the fact that your body is changing, and there isn't really anything wrong or to be ashamed of. He owes you an enormous apology. Someone else comments, not the a-hole. It might have started out as teasing, but at this point it is more bullying. I think it's time to have a serious sit down and discuss this matter. If his reaction is dismissive, then I would kindly remind yourself that this is not a hard behavior for him to stop. It is a bit of a red flag that he doesn't already, but maybe he's just a bit oblivious. His behavior is not okay. And let's get our final comment. Someone says, not the a-hole. My wife comes from a family of fat people. She is only 5 foot and she works hard to keep her weight down. She bikes 50 to 75 miles a week, but still sometimes she gains weight. I have never even once made fun of her for it or even brought it up. When she says she wants to lose weight, I tell her that's cool and I am helpful and try not to tempt her with bad food or keep eating junk in front of her. She also doesn't make fun of my bald head or my gut. But see, we love each other. We don't like hurting each other. Clearly your husband doesn't mind it. You got to ask yourself, is this the man you want to stay with? Or maybe there are others out there you would like to meet. Only you can answer that, but your husband is playing in a minefield. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Wow Drama Stories. Thank you for joining me, and if you did like this, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload again. Until next time, wishing you a drama-free life.